Your parents were wrong about money, not lying to you, and just wrong. And the two decisions they told you to make first, they're actually numbers 7 and 8 on the list that actually builds wealth. Here's a scene for you. Chicago, 2014. A guy named Marcus is sitting in his car outside his apartment, engine off, because he can't afford to keep the AC running, and he's not ready to go inside and tell his wife they're $1,700 short again this month. He's 29. He makes good money. $68,000 a year as an operations manager. Good money, and he is drowning. Now here's the part that should bother you. 11 years later, Marcus has a net worth north of $2 million. Same guy. Never got a raise that changed his life, never won anything, never inherited a dime. What changed wasn't his income. It was 10 decisions, and most of them he made before he turned 32. I'm going to walk you through every single one of them today. By the end of this video, you'll understand exactly why two people earning the same salary can retire 40 years apart from each other in outcome. But stick with me, because decision number 6 is the one almost nobody talks about, and it's the one that actually explains why some broke people get rich and some rich people go broke. And decision number 9 will probably make you a little angry because you were taught to do the opposite your entire life. Let's start at the beginning, because the first decision isn't about money at all. It's about identity. An asset puts the money in your pocket. The first thing wealthy by 40 people do early takes money out. They stop asking, your car is not an asset, and start asking, is this an asset or a liability? That investment property that costs you $400 a month in negative cash flow is not an asset, no matter what the guy who sold it to you called it. Marcus told me the moment everything shifted was when he looked at his own balance sheet, really looked at it, and realized he owned $22,000 of stuff that made him $0. And he called that being responsible with money. That's decision 1. Reframe every purchase through one lens. Does this feed me or does it feed off me? And once that clicks, something interesting happens. You start seeing money differently everywhere. Which brings us to decision 2, and this is where most people get stuck for a decade or more. Decision 2 is choosing your vehicle before you choose your amount. People spend years arguing with themselves about how much to save. 5%, 10%, 15%. When the real early decision is where that money goes. A Roth IRA, a 401k with an employer match, an index fund, real estate, a small business. The vehicle matters more than the amount in your 20s because time is doing 90% of the work, not your contribution. Here's the number that should keep you up at night in a good way. Someone who invests $200 a month starting at 25 will have more money at 65 than someone who invests $400 a month starting at 35. Double the contribution 10 years later and you still lose. That's not a savings problem. That's a decision problem. Compound growth doesn't reward effort. It rewards timing. And once you understand that one sentence every year you wait becomes something you can actually feel in your stomach. Now, I promised you this wasn't going to be another boring lecture about index funds, so let's talk about something nobody puts in these videos: the relationship decision. Decision 3, who you marry or who you build a life with, is the single biggest financial decision most people will ever make, and almost nobody treats it that way. There's a reason financial advisors quietly say that divorce is the #1 wealth killer in America. Bigger than bad investments, bigger than job loss. 2 incomes aligned toward the same goal compound. 2 incomes fighting each other cancel out. I know a couple. She's a nurse, he's an electrician. Combined income around $140,000, nothing flashy. But they sat down in year 1 and agreed on something simple. They'd live off one income and invest the other. 15 years later, they own 2 rental properties outright. Meanwhile, I know a surgeon making $400,000 a year who is functionally broke because he and his wife have never once agreed on what money is for. Money isn't math, it's alignment. Fix the alignment, and the math takes care of itself. Feel that pull yet? Because we're only getting started, and Decision 4 is going to explain why some people you know seem to get luckier with money than everyone else. Decision 4 is proximity. You've heard you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with, and you probably rolled your eyes because it sounds like a fortune cookie. But there's actual research behind this. Nicholas Christakis and James Fowler studied social networks and found that behaviors, including financial behavior, spread through your circle like a virus, sometimes 3 degrees removed from you. If your friend group treats debt as normal, financing every purchase, upgrading every car every 3 years, your brain quietly recalibrates what normal looks like, even if you never say a word about it. The engineer I mentioned earlier, 28 years old, sharp guy, makes 95,000, told me the year his net worth actually started moving wasn't the year he got a raise. It was the year he started eating lunch with 2 guys from the finance department instead of his usual crew, because those 2 guys talked about their Roth contributions the way his old friends talked about fantasy football. Same brain, different inputs, completely different trajectory. You don't need new friends, but you need at least one person in your orbit who makes wealth feel normal instead of suspicious. Okay, before I give you decision 5, I want you to actually comment right now. Type the number of the decision on this list that hit you the hardest so far. I read every single one, and it tells me exactly what to make next. Now let's keep going, because this next one is the quiet decision that separates people who stay comfortable from people who actually get rich. Decision 5 is choosing discomfort on purpose. Every wealthy person I've ever sat down with, and I mean actually sat with, not read about, has one thing in common. Somewhere early on, they did something financially uncomfortable, while everyone around them was doing something financially comfortable. They moved to the cheaper apartment when they could technically afford the nicer one. They kept the older car for 3 extra years while their coworkers leased new ones. They took the slightly lower paying job because it came with equity instead of just salary. Discomfort early buys freedom later. Comfort early buys a cage with really nice furniture in it. This is the part nobody wants to hear, so let it land for a second. The version of you that feels a little broke at 30 is often the version that feels genuinely free at 50. Now here's decision 6, and I told you this one was coming. The one that explains why some rich people go broke and some broke people get rich. It's not what you earn, it's what you're allowed to keep. Sounds obvious when I say it like that, but almost nobody structures their life around it. This is where taxes, insurance, and legal structure come in. Not because you need to become an accountant, but because the wealthy don't just make money, they protect it from the 5 or 6 ways it quietly leaks out. High earners without this decision made, doctors, lawyers, tech workers, routinely out-earn people worth 10 times more than them because income and net worth are not the same thing. And nobody explained that difference to them at 25. Morgan Housel wrote about this in a way that stuck with me. That wealth is what you don't see. It's the car not purchased, the clothes not bought, the flights not taken, sitting there quietly as money that grew instead of money that disappeared. The whole game changes the moment you stop measuring your life by what you spend and start measuring it by what you keep. Feel the shift there? Good. Because that reframe is exactly what leads into the next one. And this is where most people, even the ones doing everything else right, get quietly stuck for years without realizing it. Decision 7 is getting comfortable asking for money. Your worth, your raise, your rate. This is the decision people skip because it's uncomfortable in a different way than decision 5. It's not financial discomfort, it's social discomfort. And for most people, social discomfort is scarier. Studies on salary negotiation consistently show something brutal. People who simply ask for more, even with weak leverage, end up earning meaningfully more over a career than people who never ask at all regardless of performance. Not because asking guarantees a yes, because asking rewires how you see your own value, and that shift shows up in every interaction after it. How you price your business, how you negotiate a house, how you talk to a client. The shopkeeper I mentioned ran a small hardware store, third-generation family business, told me the year his revenue actually jumped wasn't the year he got new inventory. It was the year he finally raised his prices to match what he was actually worth, after years of being scared his customers would leave. Some left. The business tripled anyway. And that brings us to decision 8, which is going to sound like it contradicts everything I just said. But stay with me, because this is the pivot. The thing that changes how you should think about every single decision on this list. You are told over and over, that wealth is about discipline, sacrifice, grinding, and there's truth in that. You saw it in Decision 5. But here's what almost nobody says out loud. The people who actually stay wealthy long term across decades are not the most disciplined people. They're the people who built systems so good that discipline barely matters anymore. Automatic transfers the day the paycheck lands before you ever see the number and get tempted. Automatic increases every time you get a raise, so your lifestyle never catches up to your income. The engineer, the nurse, and electrician couple, Marcus, sitting in that hot car, every single one of them eventually stopped relying on willpower and built a system that made the right decision, the default decision. Willpower is a muscle that gets tired. Systems don't get tired. That's decision 8, and it's the one that makes every decision before it actually stick, instead of fading out after 6 motivated weeks. Decision 9 is the one I said might make you a little angry, and here it is. Stop trying to get rich quick, and stop feeling behind because you haven't. The entire online world, the influencers, the courses, the "I made 6 figures in 90 days" videos, has convinced an entire generation that if they're not rich by 30, something's broken. Nothing's broken. Ramit Sethi says something I think about constantly, that most people dramatically overestimate what they can do in 1 year and dramatically underestimate what they can do in 10. Marcus didn't get to $2 million through some genius trade or a startup exit. He got there through 11 boring years of the 8 decisions before this one, compounding quietly while he wasn't watching. The people chasing fast money are usually the same people with nothing to show for it 5 years later. The people who accepted slow are the ones who show up in this story as the example, which leaves us with decision 10, and I saved it for last on purpose, because it's the one that actually makes everything else mean something. Decide early what wealth is even for. Not the number, the reason behind the number. Marcus didn't want $2 million because $2 million sounds nice on a screen. He wanted to never sit in a hot car outside his own home again, dreading a conversation with his wife. That's it. That's the whole engine underneath every other decision on this list. Freedom you can name is freedom you'll actually fight for. Freedom you can't name is just a vague feeling that fades the first time saving money feels harder than spending it. So here's where that leaves you. 10 decisions. None of them require you to be a genius. None of them require a windfall, and none of them require starting over. They require you to be honest about where you are right now, today, and to make one different choice this week than you would have made last week. That's genuinely it. That's how a guy sitting in a hot car with his engine off becomes a guy who never has to have that thought again. If this actually shifted something for you, hit subscribe, because I'm building this entire channel around real, lived decisions like these, not textbook advice. See you in the next one.